Great to be here.
Cool. I was hoping maybe we can do a quick introduction for LongHash first. Then you can introduce the portfolio company of Zero G Lab and the Theoric, why you're investing in both of them, and we can kick it off the Q&A from there. Normally, I leave 10 minutes towards the end for the audience raise a hand to be online to asking live questions. How that sounds?
That sounds great. We'll make sure to leave some time at the end for community-driven dialogue.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for having me again. Great to see you, Michael and Ron, and UA behind Zero G Labs. LongHash Ventures has been really lucky to be able to back both Zero Gravity and Theoric in its prior rendition at a very early stage, and really saw a meteoric rise over the past 6 months to 2 years. And things have been just clipping at light speed from what we've seen. So LongHash is a crypto venture company where we back seed to Series A founders that are at the core of blockchain innovation. Besides Zero G and Theoric, we've been lucky to also partner with ZK Sync, Saga, Neutron, and EtherFi and IONET, for example. AI and Web3 is one area that we're very excited about, and we'll spend the next hour digging a lot deeper into it. All right, with that out of the way, would love to get things kicked off. So, folks, I think you're really lucky to be on the call with us today. The AI age has been described as the age of abundance. Access to intelligence is as fundamental to the introduction of fire by Prometheus, giving light to all of night, and AI gives automated means of production to all people, freeing us from mundane tasks. But while fire is a true commodity, AI is, as it currently stands, owned by a select few. So some of the things that we're talking about today were, for example, be how power shifts from being the means of production to owning the means of production, and how does the collective and libertarian nature of Web3 plays into that, and the talk of the next billion users being on-chain agents, and how does the on-chain agent coordination network and data injection network kind of enable the onboarding of the next billion agent users. And of course, while we have a couple of very exciting product announcements from both Zero Gravity and Theoric, specifically with Neutron Testnet and Infinity Studio, why don't we start off maybe with what, Michael and Ron, what would you do in this age of abundance if you weren't building what you're building today?
You'll probably guess my answer, which is go meditate in a cave somewhere. No, just all jokes aside, I would still be building something for the betterment of humanity. And so if it's not AI, if AI is like completely solved, I'm sure there'd be other things to do. So whether that's introducing things like meditation to the masses, or developing some other type of technology. Maybe it'd be more space travel related, since I am a big Star Trek fan as well.
Sounds like you're gonna be keeping yourself busy. And hey, Pluto tried the whole cave thing, and it worked out pretty well for him.
Well, I guess I think that even within the space of AI, there's so many things to do, right? So while we're really focusing on a protocol to make it so anyone can build great agents and they can collaborate to create value, like an obvious way to build on that is, either to be building really killer agents that are useful for the community, right? So that's something I think would be really, it can be its own really high value area to work on, something that I can imagine doing, as well as like looking ahead at public goods and how to, as agents get more and more powerful, how to make those agents, make sure that the system, the way the agents are working is really beneficial and the right incentives that are there to steer in a positive direction, right? So those are things that I think are, I'd be focusing on if I weren't already focusing on Theoric and sort of building that foundation layer for agents.
Ron, I'm really glad that you sort of mentioned the fact that Theoric is one part of foundational work in the world of AI. And to be honest, sometimes I am concerned that AI Web3 is almost too hyped because it has seemingly become a gravitational force pulling all of crypto, because we do have a lot of very real challenges to overcome and problems to solve. And we will dig into that in the next hour. But perhaps to sort of help prime this conversation, could we give the audience today an idea of the nature of collaboration between Theoric and Zero Gravity? What will be introduced, what will be unlocked, and how could users participate, and what could they anticipate?
You want me, or why don't I start?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Turn it to you, Michael, for some comments as well. I think there's sort of two really important ways that Theoric and Zero G are collaborating. One is that Zero G has really made a fantastic breakthrough in distributed, decentralized storage that actually unlocks a lot of things that you want to do with AI. So directly, agent builders who are building agents now have the ability to do things like store the data that their agents need and access the data their agents need in a decentralized way, which makes it censorship resistant, but still maintain the performance of centralized storage, right? So a really important thing to understand is that AI agents, their lifeblood is real-time data, right? People often think about the data that's used to train the models, and we'll get to that. But training today, the way models get trained is it takes months, and then there's a testing period and a release period. So even if the agent, the underlying model knew about something, it's limited to information that was months old. And also, it's much better for agents to have focus on the relevant data, right? So there's techniques like RAG, retrieval augmented generation, where documents are made available to agents so that they have the latest context. What's in the news, right? What's the sentiment? What's the information that matters to me? Making that available, sitting on top of Zero G storage, we think is going to be huge game changer versus doing it on, where you see today is mostly people have been using centralized systems like the big clouds storage system. So that's one big difference. Now you back up and say, well, what about specializing the models that are being used by agents, right? Fine tuning them. And I think training your own, but mostly what we see people doing is taking existing, open source models and fine tuning them. And again, having the right kind of decentralized data, so can't be censored, and it works well, it performs well for training, is a big opportunity. And then I guess the last thing I'd say, in addition to Zero G storage being a fantastic way of powering these agents with the data they need, we're also excited to be collaborating with Zero G about creating agents that serve the Zero G community. I don't know, Michael, if you want to talk more about that or any other aspects.
Yeah, I think you said it quite beautifully. In a way, I'm really excited over time too, with kind of high performance storage and a lot of the other partnerships that we're building, is to have a full chain of custody or chain of provenance, really. Because right now, if you ask any centralized AI provider or AI model providers, like, hey, where did you get the data from? What data was exactly used? How did you kind of make decisions around that data? How did you clean it? How did you label it correctly? They won't be able to give you all the pieces of information. And so by putting everything on chain, we get that. And then basically when you have an agent in Theoric, you can then eventually, through this full kind of on-chain AI perspective, trace it back to saying like, here are all the data pieces that were used that inform that model, which then this agent is based on. And so super excited about this particular world, especially for societal type use cases when we do have lots of humanoid robots actually running specific systems, whether it's production or administrative or logistic systems. And so that's kind of the broader vision. But then utilizing a lot of agents for our community specifically. So anyone that's going to build on Zero G can then use theoric agents to, let's say, inform a specific part of their DApp if they wanted to. Let's say you wanted to build a prediction market and you wanted to experiment with some agents kind of trading against each other to see what happens, then you can do things like that through our partnership, which I'm super excited about.
Michael, I'm really glad that you mentioned that there is a great amount of obscurity around cleaning and providing the data with hyperscalers. Right? We really don't know what kind of data ChatGPT or Mistral have been trained on. And that kind of leads us into the fundamental truth of how AI and Web3 are complementary, whereas one is centralizing, Web3 is libertarian in nature. And if I may kind of give a little bit sneak peek into some of the early ideas that we are experimenting around incentive structures and the technical kind of design changes that Zero Gravity has thought about lately in, for example, changing from a DAS to VRF quorum structure in order to boost performance. Can you walk us through some of the most recent announcements that Zero Gravity has made in order to provide a practical and usable solution in this global coordination of data network?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way to describe it is with testnet v2 or Newton testnet v2. We've basically refactored a lot of our storage code to make it a lot more efficient, easier to use, have a full SDK, so it should be really easy to store and retrieve data quickly from the Zero-G network. So that was one big improvement, and certainly still building out the documentation. And then the hackathon yesterday was actually really great for that because we realized there were a few gaps here and there that we can definitely patch up. And so that was a great experience for us. The other part is we moved away from a data availability sampling technique to actually doing a quorum-based technique to guarantee the data availability property. And so that's important because you essentially get more security by doing that with a data availability sampling, versus a data availability sampling kind of based approach. Because the security guarantee in something like Celestia's network is essentially you have to trust the network itself, versus for us, you basically just trust the original underlying data that came through, and you still have the full kind of security guarantees of the underlying network where it came from. So if it's a Ethereum-based request, you keep the kind of security guarantees of the Ethereum-based request, versus then saying like, oh, I'm going to only accept the security of a completely separate network. And so that was really part of this design, to make sure that we have the optimal trade-off between performance, security, and also programmability. Now, why does that matter kind of in the long kind of scale of things is because if we envision a future where everything, let's say AI, can be done on chain, especially for on-chain training, which is still an unsolved problem from a research and development perspective, and many people actually say it can't be done, which I disagree with. But we kind of create a step forward into that direction where we basically say, you can do things fully on chain, especially training, when you have the full data pipeline that's required to do it. Like, for example, training big LLMs today are tens of gigabytes per second of data capacity need that you need in order to train them. And no DA system today is able to handle that type of load until zero-G comes along. And so it gets us one step closer to this whole vision of kind of fully on-chain AI, fully decentralized, fully, as you said, kind of a libertarian force where we get ownership back versus dealing with centralized forces. Let's say if you imagine a future where all of AI, and with that, most functions in society are determined by a handful of companies, like how comfortable are you with that future? Versus a future where you have many, thousands, maybe even tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of communities that are collaboratively co-owning AI and living a life full of abundance where they get the benefits of what they contribute. So today, if you're contributing data on Reddit, you're not the beneficiary of it. Reddit is, because they're selling that data, and then ultimately the companies that are using that in their training for their models then become the beneficiaries because they'll charge you for it. And so we just envision a very different future than that.
Those are great points, Michael. And maybe if I can build on them as well as touch on, Roy, your point about what are some of the announcements. I think we violently agree with the importance of community-owned AI and empowering the community end to end. And I think, very complementary with that notion of not having big tech kind of control the access, control the models, and dictate the terms. Incredibly important is also the way that AI actually gets used, the application of it, we see increasingly will be agents, right? So this idea that we're moving from a world where people have chat bots that you have to spoon feed and ask them to do everything one step at a time. The AI models are getting so much better at writing code, at generating plans, at accessing data, that increasingly we're moving to a world of agents where AI does useful things for you. But we have a big clash in visions. There's a future where the community, individuals who are passionate about a topic and builders can build specialized agents that do certain things really well, enable them to create great offerings. But what you also see is the vision of billionaires owning the agents and defining the way the agents work for everyone, right? So whether it be Apple Intelligence on your phone that becomes this choke point and restricts access to AI, or whether it be Sky or whatever you call it, talking to you in your ear like in the movie Her from OpenAI. Big tech is trying to create one agent to bind them all that will control us all. And we think that it's really incredibly important that the community gets to create agents, and that community create agents are first class, right? So we already see OpenAI, they've got something called GPTs that let people build some kind of an agent, but it's really weak. It has limited capabilities. The agents can't collaborate, and it doesn't get used unless you specifically say, oh, I really want to use this specific GPT. Whereas OpenAI's agents get used by default. So it's incredibly important. And this is why we've built Infinity Studio, which is a beautiful UI that's built for the future of how to interact with agents, community-committed agents that can do long-lived work and report back to you and share beautiful visuals and give you insights. So we think that's another important part of how does the community take over control and not allow the billionaires to dictate our AI future, right? So that's something we demonstrated at Consensus, and we're excited to have a developer preview at ECC in a couple of weeks and give people the ability to start to build agents that can run in the Infinity Studio and collaborate with other agents in a powerful way. Also worth pointing out, we've already been showing some examples and have a lot of interest. Like we've released some agents that are now live powering Space and Time, which is a decentralized database, their application. So Houston is a collective of agents that help developers write code for Space and Time and do database and analysis on index blockchain data, including forecasts and visualization, as well as answering documentation questions. And like similarly, we demonstrated an agent for working with Filecoin to make it easy to access information about developing with their system. And then likewise, we demonstrated a meme coin agent that helps people analyze and understand what's the community saying about meme coins, what's trending, what's happening with ownership. So analyzing index blockchain data as well as community sentiment, right? So these are just examples of some of the things. And we're looking forward to, we have a number of these agent collaborations in the work. In addition to, we're excited to show off some of what we're collaborating with Zero G on in the near future as we push towards our testnet, our first testnet next month.
Thanks, guys. That was a super comprehensive overview. And to kind of double click on what you've mentioned and making sure that the community gets to play a key role in this humanity level of revolution, what we're looking at in our efforts in opening up the walled garden of AI, leveraging blockchains as a global coordination network, even though it feels gravitational to us who live and breathe it, it's still David versus Goliath in the grand scheme of things, right? In the latest report from Bloomberg, between the four hyperscalers, they're investing between 200 billion to 400 billion into AI per annum. And so, there's so much to be built out. And I think we just heard a couple very interesting innovations in terms of using the VRF together with data availability quorums to make sure that the data stays available and accessible to community in a permissionless way. And we heard about that Infinity Studio is currently experimenting with a number of use cases for on-chain AI agents. But, I think there's a little bit more to it than that. I saw also that Theoric has recently launched the proof of engagement, and Zero G is also the first to pioneer the separation of data publishing to data storage that allows even more different hardware owners and operators to participate in the system in boosting its performance. So can we stay on this topic just a little bit longer? And we'd love to for folks to understand, how can they participate in Theoric's proof of engagement, and how can folks sort of help decentralize the unique data publishing and data storage architecture by Zero Gravity?
Great question, Roy. Maybe I'll start talking a little bit about proof of engagement. It's really a way to bring people into the community and participate in core behaviors. Like, one of the things we believe is that the strength of the Web3 community is that you're going to get faster feedback from people in the community around agents and what's useful. And it's a way of us outgrowing the centralized alternatives, right? So it's incentives for people to get involved, start to interact with agents, creating agents that are useful, right? So, if initially some of the first things are just getting in the loop by following us on X and, listening, joining our Discord, we're working with partners to roll out shared incentives. And really, we want to get people to start to give feedback on agents. And if initially it's about getting developers to build great agents, and get rewards, we also want to create rewards for anyone in the community to jump in and create agents in a no-code way, which is coming soon, right? So we're going to create more and more incentives for people to create great agents and interact with them. And of course, we also are excited to have, ambassadors get engaged to educate the community and each other. So those are a few thoughts on what we're doing, and I'll turn it to Michael.
Yeah, just on the point of agents, I actually think that, or we at Zero G believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, most on-chain transactions will be agent-to-agent transactions. So it'll probably not be uncommon for someone to say like, "Oh, go speak to my agent about this." Hopefully there'll be a friendlier term for an agent at that point, but just wanted to mention that as well. And that's why it's particularly exciting that we're collaborating on things. Roy, particularly to your question around separating data publishing and storage lanes, we basically had this insight that if we want performance that's similar to centralized systems, we can't have a broadcast bottleneck on the network. So what does that mean? So basically, in a setup, let's say like Celestia's, you basically have a block that then gets moved to all validator nodes on the network simultaneously. And then the data sampling kind of starts happening, and then some agreement happens around data availability property. And so that to us basically just seems like you're doing the same amount of work just 100 times. So why not take the kind of block data, move it into a data storage lane, and then only send around really small bits of data in the form of KZG commits / like validity proofs, and then also proofs of random storage requests, because those are very small bits of data versus like sending entire block transactions across the network. And so that then creates significantly faster speeds on a per node basis, 10 megabytes per second per node, and then B, it creates an aspect of horizontal scalability. So instead of being limited by whatever the slowest node is on a network like Celestia's, which is roughly 1.4 megabytes or so, maybe slightly faster in different environments, you have a node that's about 10 megabytes per second, highly optimized, and then horizontally scalable. So if you then start having 5,000 nodes on the network, you can get to speeds of 50 gigabytes per second, which is then enough to do things like on-chain training of AI models, which will be super exciting once we figure out all the other research problems around that. But that was really the core insight of why we did it. And so the way people can then participate in the network in a permissionless way is to run a storage node. And we have certain hardware requirements. We're thinking of essentially having a fast and a slow lane. A slow lane meaning the storage providers could use HDDs, which are much cheaper, hold more storage, but are inherently slower than solid state drives. And so the idea was that for data availability, you need the fast lane because you want that to be done as quickly as possible. But for certain long-term storage requests, let's say you're storing training data and that's not accessed very often, you may be really price sensitive. And so we want to create this aspect where we have a much cheaper storage solution. And in both cases, we're aiming to be up to 80% less than AWS costs, which then would, I think, even make it exciting for non-decentralized users like centralized AI companies as well to utilize us. But yeah, that's definitely a really exciting reality that we're building towards.
Michael, I think it's a great point that the innovation ecosystem of Web3 is going to outstrip the slow centralized players, right? So right now, people would say, well, decentralization is sort of, there's a tax. Like, oh, you might have to give up some things in order to get decentralization and censorship resistance and community control. But like with your innovations in building beautiful decentralized storage, we think that's going to start to apply across more and more of the ecosystem. But like DPEN for GPU compute, as the world gets increasingly constrained by power limits, we think that DPEN is going to be able to offer superior options than centralized providers can in terms of GPU compute for AI. And similarly, we think that the innovation ecosystem with proof of engagement, with real incentives for all the brilliant builders in Web3 to build the best agents, is just going to outcompete slow, centralized product teams in big companies. And you're going to see this renaissance of AI for everyone that just works better in Web3.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I've also, to that point, I think saw a report that was maybe published a couple of years ago that compared what the network hash rate of Bitcoin is versus Google's capacity. And I think it concluded that the hash rate overall of Bitcoin was the equivalent of about, Google's data center capacity was the equivalent of 1% of the hash rate of the Bitcoin network. So don't underestimate the coordinated efforts of very large communities to band together and make a big impact.
Oh, 100% collective and on a per unit basis, right? There's a reason why like Tesla first sold a higher kind of higher tier model in as the first EV, and then slowly went down to as from sports cars and racing cars to then SUVs to everyday sedans, because you do need the higher unit economics fundamentally to justify that initial capital spend. And the same thing in AI, right? So to train a state-of-the-art foundational model, it costs like tens to hundreds of millions. And so the way I think about this even on a per unit basis is, how much can you really charge asking an AI model to write 10 lines of code for you versus deploying an AI agent on chain, hooking it up to Stripe now enable stablecoin transactions and participate meaningfully in economically productive means. So even from a per unit perspective, totally agree with you guys. I think there's so many angles that we can play in making sure that Web3 becomes not only the hosting gardens for openly owned AI, but also perhaps the first high value per transaction use cases. Now, on this note, I have I think we have time for maybe 1 to 2 more topics before I open it up to the community. So speaking of use cases, we briefly talked about the Filecoin use case and Space and Time's Houston agent. And I think, Michael, we're aligned in that in the next 5 to 10 years, perhaps the majority of users on chain will become agents, and hopefully we'll have a better name for them by then. Yeah. What are some of the most exciting use cases for on-chain AI agents, in your opinion?
I mean, it really spans the gamut. If you think about it, to me, agents or kind of these AI models are essentially becoming the equivalent to digital beings. And in the future, once we reach AGI, then an agent can essentially do any task that a human can. And so super excited about the future where, for example, I can just have an agent handle all my administrative things. Let's say, hey, I need to pay this bill, go pay this bill for me. It's like a very simple use case. Or I need to find a time to visit my doctor and I want to have a pre-negotiated rate. Like, can you figure this out for me? It's a bit more of a complex use case. And then it can get even more complex where I could then maybe even say, I want a new web presence and I want to have this type of budget. Like, go figure this out. Either produce it for me or work with a number of agents that can coordinate some way of doing this. So that's an even more complex type of use case. And then finally, probably the most complex is really on the city and nationwide type of level where we have societal type of use cases for coordinated efforts of agents. Let's say it can be anywhere from trash collection to logistics system management to maybe even managing entire companies that are just companies of agents at some point with some human oversight and alignment. So I'm super excited about seeing that world where it's really agent driven.
I think those are great points. And obviously, I think, some of the key aspects of that is as you look at more and more powerful agents that do more sophisticated tasks, how it inevitably becomes coordination among a collective of agents that are working together that accomplish things. And I think we're super excited about, having more and more powerful agents that can be used together to accomplish more and more. And so Michael brings up a number of great examples. We already see that in the Web3 community, people are very interested in doing research on projects that they might want to make investments in or that they might want to partner with. We're seeing a lot of interest around, using agents to help with governance, to help communities understand issues and make better decisions and provide leverage. We think that agents are going to be used not only to help in so many aspects of everyday life, like planning trips or planning budgets or deciding on important life decisions, but also we think they're going to be incredibly important in business, right? As we've already got agents that counsel analytics that can analyze database data like an automated data scientist that are running on Theoric. And we think that kind of capability is going to naturally help anyone running a business be more data driven. And, over time, that's going to be, more assistance with a full life cycle, right? So imagine if you want to start an e-commerce business and you can have agents that help you at every step of the way, from planning to launching a website to getting materials manufactured and shipped to optimizing, running experiments. We think all of those aspects are going to be increasingly supported by powerful agents, and that more and more of business will be automated in this way. And what it will do is it will shift from a lot of drudgery of low-level details that people need to work on to people thinking about strategy and thinking about the creative aspects, right? So we think agents are going to unlock a ton of opportunity for people to create more value and do really impactful things by being superpowered.
Yeah, I wonder if the use case of agent-to-agent dating will ever be a real phenomenon. Just kind of joking, but it's very, very true that we'll start seeing anything that a human being can do be done by agents at some point in the future, including things like writing software code, for example. It's very feasible that in the next 5 to 10 years, most of the software code is likely written by some type of agent with some specialization or some type of specific understanding of software systems.
Yeah, totally.
Well,
I mean, that's why Jensen Huang has famously, I think, warned while he was at Stanford to tell the future generation not to get into coding because that will quickly get automated away.
Although, Roy and Michael, the real question is perhaps not what are things that you think will get automated by AI, but what things do you not think will be automated by AI in the coming years, right? I mean, we're making so much progress on AI across so many domains that I guess I would argue that people building amazing software will get a ton of leverage from AI that helps them. But, as long as there is a kind of a better human ability to grasp the big picture, that will still have a role for super empowered humans to direct the AI software developers and guide them. So in a way, it's almost like technical product management becomes more important, working with amazing AI developers that execute on it. But at the point that the AIs can sort of fully automate all the knowledge work, then you obviously, if you get to that point of AGI, then I guess what's left are various physical tasks that humans do better than robots. But we may be a little further. There's people who are talking about that being a few years away. I think it's going to be a little bit longer than that before we get to that level of AI does everything.
That's stay on this topic a little bit, because even though fundamentally I'm aligned in the arrival of AGI, we can argue all day on like how many years it's going to take, but vast majority of tasks may be automated away by highly functional automated intelligence. But let's have some fun with this. I like to push back on the notion of full automation on-chain or off-chain. Have you guys heard of the cake mix paradox?
I have not. Enlighten us.
Ooh, all right. So the cake mix paradox says that humans don't want to be automated away. So this was, I think, in the early 60s. a pre-made cake mix was first invented and introduced so that you don't have to break eggs and milk and flour and spend back bending effort in mixing all together anymore. You simply just put the powder, the cake mix in water, put it in the oven, and voila, a cake comes out the other side. The paradox is that it sold horribly. Nobody wanted it. And they found out after the manufacturer found out after extensive interviews that actually full automation was turning people off from baking cakes. And so they tweaked the formula just a little bit so that all that humans have to do is buy the cake mix, but crack a couple of eggs, and the rest goes fully automated. So what do you think will be the role of humans in the future? What do you think of the cake mix paradox? I think we have maybe one more question and we'll open up to the floor.
I guess I can go first. There's always a limit to analogies, especially when you then relate those to very complex systems. But I'd say that what I would love to see, and some of my professors have actually postulated that maybe in 2 generations we don't have to work for a living anymore, which would be awesome in the sense that what if human beings can really choose what they're truly passionate about and then put their talents and energies towards that versus needing to choose something because they need to have an income to sustain themselves. And so what would the world look like when that's actually the case? Would we have more scientific advancement, for example? Would we have more time for leisurely activities? Would we have more time to connect with our families? Would we have more time to do random things like go and meditate in a cave for a few weeks? So
that'd be great.
I'd love to see a world like that where it's much more, all the basic necessities are really taken care of, and the things that we have to worry about is like, what does our particular path look like? What does our particular path look like for our particular evolution? What is it that we want to learn in this lifetime? What is it that we want to contribute in this lifetime? I mean, that would be a pretty awesome place to be. It would be kind of magical and heavenly. I certainly hope that we kind of zero G and Theoric included can build that world. Because I also kind of fundamentally believe that if we get to artificial superintelligence at some point, or ASI, that I hope that the superintelligence is basically friendly and was trained by us to then guide us into better ways of living, versus it being a destructive force and just concluding that, all life on Earth that is a human being is not suiting kind of the overall ecosystem of the planet and therefore needs to be destroyed. So I definitely hope it's a much more benevolent, abundant world with artificial superintelligence.
Well, to that point, I think, it's very much we are creating the future as we create AI, but this is why it's important that we have community governance and participation in the AI future we create, right? That we don't just have power-seeking billionaires race to build AI that may not lead to the future that we want. And I definitely resonate with, we want to create a future where we create not only abundance, but the opportunity for more purpose and more value creation by people as AI does more and more. And the journey to that has to be intentional. We have to think about the kind of AI we want. We want to have, the important part for us in Theoric is to create incentives for beneficial agents for the community, right? So that there isn't an incentive for somebody to create an extractive agent that exploits people, seeks power, tries to gain dominance at the expense of the collective, of the community, right? So I think as a society, we have to make good choices about AI, and we have to do so based on this. What is the future we want? I mean, I think it's going to be, as AI does more and more, what becomes meaningful purpose for people is an incredibly important topic that people will spend more time on thinking about. It's also going to be incredibly important that we think about, how to sort of distribute benefits. Like if we go with a system where essentially people who own capital and control AI, get all the benefits, that's deeply unfair, which leads to things like universal basic income and distribution of benefits to all. So there's some really big questions coming up, and it's important that we build towards a future that enables the vision we want to see and not dystopia.
Yeah, I love that point, Ron. In a sense, it's we also saw this with the invention of atomic power. You can use it for good by creating, power plants and energy and so on, and figure out, certain processes that then lead to, better propulsion systems and so on that can enable, like star travel, or you can weaponize it and make an atomic bomb out of it to stop wars. So it's really up to us what the choice is, and hopefully we will lean as a human race towards more the former, where it's very productive and it's about abundance, versus the latter, which is then about control and domination, as Ron pointed out.
Oh, yes. And both the AI Oppenheimer moment and the cross section of AGI and UBI are going to be much bigger conversations, though, and hopefully we'll have time for that. I think we have about 10 minutes left, and we'd love to open up to the audience and see if anybody would love to come on and share some of your thoughts, or pitch an idea, or ask a question to one of our speakers today.
Yeah, people can just request to speak, then I can promote them to be the speaker. I think you guys are also asking a lot of good questions and talking a lot insight. The audience may or may not have questions, but we do see MJ had a request. Let me unmute himself. MJ, can you try to speak?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so my question is that Zero Gravity Labs, OG Labs, now we renamed it, our project's name. We are going for AGI approach. So one thing being that we are on blockchain, so that thing else being AGI. Other than that, what we are actively striving for?
You cut out a little bit for me. I don't know if it was for other
Okay.
people as well.
Let me rephrase my question once again. Okay. I'll put my question. So my question is, so being OG project, we are going for AGI approach. So one thing helps in being AGI is actually being on blockchain. Other than that, we are doing.
Is the question, what else are we doing to support AGI besides just moving things on chain?
Just being on blockchain.
I guess if that's the question, then yeah, it's Zero G Labs. So there's a lot that by moving things on chain that can support kind of this vision. So first, when you have kind of a full chain of custody and provenance, and you know exactly which data pieces are used, you can create a much more fair kind of ecosystem of data providers that can actually participate in this whole process. So take the example of screenwriters in Hollywood, or people that do kind of costume design and photographers and so on. Let's say they contribute content today and it's used in a model somewhere. They don't get compensated for it. But in the future, it could be very different. You can essentially tokenize your contribution and then utilize it as input into a specific model. And then every time that model is called or that agent is called, you could reward kind of participants for something like that. And so it creates a much more community-driven approach where it's a much more fair system of rewards that can be enabled as a result. And why is that important for AGIs? Because we're kind of running out of scrapable data on the internet, and we need significantly more data to get to AGI levels. So that's kind of one point I would say. And then the other point is there's also movement towards more modularity in the kind of AI community, where there's one approach which is, bigger models are better, which is very much a centralizing force, because as Roy kind of pointed out, there's 200 to 400 billion of infrastructure investment that goes into basically buying GPUs, creating data centers, training up these really large models, and the more parameters, the better, and maybe that'll lead us down the AGI route. But there's also this other kind of more decentralizing force where smaller, more well-trained models kind of put together through LLM middleware may result in the same thing. And right now, at the current stage of kind of blockchain and decentralized AI development, that's more suited for kind of on-chain training and on-chain building of kind of these small, let's call it small language models or smaller models. For example, we have Pond building on top of us, which is doing a large graph model off of blockchain data that can then be used to predict profitable trading and so on. But that's a counter force. And I think, again, a community approach could very much prevail. And it's going to be really interesting to see what the future holds. If we can figure out a community incentivization structure across every part of the AI stack, I wonder if we get to AGI faster in a more decentralized context versus kind of these handful of large companies trying to move towards it. So I don't know the answer, and definitely OpenAI and others have a head start right now, but maybe that'll change in the next few years. So I'm really excited about monitoring the future and kind of building it together with everyone. And Zero-G and Theoric are definitely big parts of that equation.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add to that. I agree with all of what Michael just said. I think there's a big part of letting the community participate in building specialized agents that do things well and letting them collaborate in a way to achieve better results. We already see that specialized agents working together in collectives do much better than generic just raw models or agents that try to do everything. And we're seeing rapid progress. The next generation of models, including open models, are going to be much better at planning and using tools that make it possible to build these specialized agents. This all boils down to composability. How do you make it so agents can work well together? And how do you assess and promote the high quality agents? So we've done work on proof of contribution. So you can demonstrate that agents contributed to good results and boost them so that there's positive feedback for the community to learn and build better AI. So in this way, I think there's a deep way where the community and the incentives and the innovation that is possible in Web3 is some of the most important aspects of why decentralized AI can outcompete centralized AI.
And maybe you bring up something else that just popped into my mind. Maybe another kind of key aspect to this is the whole idea around alignment of kind of these models and agents over time. If we have the right economic incentives over time, then hopefully we can align all of those agents, A, in an environment where they can't cheat, and then B, in an environment where they will do the right thing because they're aligned correctly from an economic perspective as well. So I think blockchain is ideally suited for that too.
Love that. I think from my conversations with friends on Altimeter and Andreessen, there's a funny thing that the very people who built these large language models are not the ones benefiting from it, because there doesn't seem to be a moat around the language model architecture, but more around throwing enough capital at it so it can train on internet scale data and have trillions of parameters. And we know if there's one thing that Web3 is really good at, it's pulling a large sum of capital very quickly. So I'm excited for community invested, community owned, and community run AI models, and especially excited for more folks to tune into exciting updates from both Zero Gravity and Theoric in the coming months. Now, Ada, I want to double check with you. Is there anything else that you would like to cover? Otherwise, I think we have had a great hour of discussion.
Yeah, I saw Xin Gan. She was on mute, then now we topped hours, so likely we won't be able to answer her questions. But if you have any follow-up questions, you can actually post on Discord or post on our Twitter message. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. With that, I just give it to Michael and Ron for the closing thoughts.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you want to? Yeah, it's all good. Closing thoughts is just, again, super excited about building the future at the intersection of Web3 and AI. And if you haven't yet, definitely follow Theoric and Zero G Labs, the accounts. Follow my personal X and Ron's personal X as well to stay up to date on what the latest news are. Lots of exciting things are going to be happening. We're also working on some really cool technology right now that we haven't talked much about, which is kind of a decentralized serving framework. But you'll hear about that in the future, and things like verifiable inference and so on. So the future is bright. I think we have a chance to really build a better, more abundant world. And again, super excited about the partnership between Zero G and Theoric.
It was super exciting. Definitely echo following all of us on X and joining our Discords. The other thing I'd say is we really are excited to hear about what the community are excited to see from AI agents, and love to see the innovation of builders and more broadly the community. And stay tuned as we roll out beta access as we go into DevNet. We'd love you to get engaged and get on early access to testing and giving feedback as we launch our testnet. So lots of ways to engage, and we're excited to build the communities together.
All right, folks, you heard it. Lots of alpha being dropped today. Follow everyone here and tune in to Theoric's upcoming announcement on their beta testnet and Zero Gravity's new reveal today around decentralized serving. And as we strive together into the age of abundance. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye.